I am so deeply annoyed right now. I'm just so freaking beyond my limit. I want to try and do a good old-fashioned angry rant because I just need to vent. What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, and today we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy VII cell phone games because FF7 is now getting two separate prequels, both on mobile devices, one of which is a Battle Royale that frankly looks like garbage, and additionally, they're going to be retelling the original saga of FF7, including the prequels and sequels, Advent Children, and everything in between, but now on mobile devices, and they just seem like complete garbage. Now, I want to break down why. This is not just some mindless hate. I want to try and be constructive as to why I think that these seem so, honestly, disrespectful to Final Fantasy fans. Now, let's start off by taking a look at this Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale. I mean, what a great idea, right? Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's just going to be freaking Fortnite on your cell phone, but with a very, very poor skin on it. Just by looking at the screen here, we can see that there's a bunch of weapon pickups. There's going to be materia to have your magic, your different activities. But what gets me the most is mostly, more than anything, it's not just the graphics. Like, yes, okay, this game kind of just visually looks like garbage, but more than that, it's bizarre to be here in Midgar playing as the soldiers. Like, the fact that we're going to be sniping each other in some of these very famous locations, it is ridiculous to me. Like, this itself looks super, super stupid because this is going to be an official prequel. Square Enix and the developers have already confirmed the fact that this is going to be part of the official storyline, and it takes place 30 years before the actual events of FF7, and it's called Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. Oh my god, as the title implies, it's centered on a soldier, a group of enhanced fighters that play an important role of FF7's story. A multiplayer battle royale seems like a strange way to tell that story, but the trailer at least shows some iconic Final Fantasy VII locales. In an interview with Weekly Famitsu, Final Fantasy VII series director Tetsui Nomura suggests that it won't be a lot of storytelling, but that you'll be able to play solo or in three-person teams, and it'll be leveling up, defeating monsters, RPG mechanics. Oh my god, here is why this annoys me. Okay, Final Fantasy has done a lot of different things. I've played literally every single Final Fantasy game ever translated into English, and a lot that haven't been translated into English. I've done everything from capturing monsters to trying to win in chocobo races in Final Fantasy XIV, and even stuff like, of course I have every version of Final Fantasy VII itself. This is my favorite game of all time. So I have the games, the sequels, hell, I've got stuff like the original freaking strategy guides. I have every Final Fantasy VII strategy guide, and even have Final Fantasy VII bookmarks for when I look at my strategy guys. But you know what? Final Fantasy takes a lot of different styles, every single game. Even within Final Fantasy VII itself, of course, we've seen Cloud appear in things like Final Fantasy Tactics. We've seen him show up in battling games like Dissidia or Dissidia, you know, the fighting games of Final Fantasy. But here is the thing, there has always been a heart and soul at the center of Final Fantasy VII. The idea of grief and trying to improve yourself. In every version of these stories, what ties them together the most is, of course, the brilliant writing. The fact that these characters are dealing with trying to save the world and stop Sephiroth while dealing with their internal demons. And that to me is such a brilliant mixture of it. That's why they work. So the idea of taking these storylines and just bastardizing them, making them into a paycheck. The idea of possibly seeing Cloud do like Fortnite dances or just something incredibly cringy to me. Like, I know that this is going to be a prequel, but if they can possibly monetize this by selling you Sephiroth skins or something, even though Sephiroth shouldn't even be born yet when this game takes place, they're absolutely going to do it. And to me, part of the reason this is so annoying is that it just looks like garbage. It doesn't even look fun. It looks like just such a stupid idea for a concept that just shouldn't even exist in the first place. FF7 has done some weird stuff, and in fact, even the remake itself, the version we're getting right now, is kind of retelling the classic storyline, but in such a different way. But I still believe in the idea of Final Fantasy VII because it's always managed to have that heart. It's always managed to have that centered focus that says, you can improve, you can beat this, you can actually progress and conquer everything it takes to save the world. And this just looks like stupid sellout trash because they don't care anymore. It's just another Square Enix microtransaction magical journey. But now let's talk about that other cell phone game. Now, this is one that was leaked a while ago, and it's called Ever Crisis, which is going to be doing the entire Final Fantasy VII timeline, the entire freaking compilation, but now in a singular mobile game. Now, I want to read this article before we start to flip out about it because it is very, very bizarre. So what they said is they've now confirmed that it's going to do everything everything in the Final Fantasy VII timeline. So it's going to do Final Fantasy VII, the prequel, which is of course Crisis Core and Before Crisis. It's going to do the sequels, which is Dirge of Cerberus and Advent Children. It is going to be all-encompassing. It's going to be everything in one big chunk. Now, obviously, the biggest thing that's just so confusing and frankly baffling about this is that currently we're getting a Final Fantasy VII Remake series. They're working on that literally as I record this video, but now they're also doing this. Like, here are some side-by-side comparison screenshots of the original Final Fantasy VII. This is the Ever Crisis scene of that Final Fantasy VII, and now here is Seventh Heaven, which is Tifa's bar, in the version we got on the PlayStation 4 and coming soon to the PlayStation 5. This to me is so weird. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to take this and create alternate takes on the same series again and again and again? And it's because of the cash more than anything else. But to go back to this article itself, the weirdest part about this is that they say they're basically trying to hint that this is, again, going to be very, very vital to understanding the entire Final Fantasy VII universe. In an interview with Weekly Famitsu, director Tetsuya Nomura strongly hints that you'll meet a younger Sephiroth. It goes without saying that you'll get to see the early days of a certain legendary hero when he was younger. He also says that the game will be released in monthly installments, and you'll have a materia combat system like the original game. Personally, I actually beat Final Fantasy XV Pocket Edition. This was basically the same sort of concept, but with a singular game. Now, I played all of it. It looks like this. I'm showing you the gameplay to really try and get you to mentally digest it. This itself was also released in chapters. Every single month, there'd be this little chunk of it that would come out. And let me just tell you, it is a very bastardized version of the original experience. Yes, it's sort of told a similar story. It managed to hit a lot of the major notes, but to try and act like Pocket Edition and the real Final Fantasy XV, where anything close to each other, is definitely a dramatic exaggeration. Whereas I think that this is exactly what they're going to do with the Final Fantasy VII series now. They're going to go in here and say, hey, we can start to sell you multiple versions of every single Final Fantasy. There's people like me who are going to own everything. I own the game on PC, I own the game on PlayStation 4, and now I own it on PS5. Now it looks like I'm going to be owning it on my cell phone. Now, honestly, part of what gets me about this is the fact that they are clearly working on this. Like, this is actually what kind of irks me about it, is that this is from the official trailer. This is actually revealing stuff about the game itself. Look at the quality of this. Like, part of what gets me the most is, I'm just going to say it, this should not be on cell phones. Or if it's going to be on cell phones, it also deserves to be on mainline consoles. As I look at this, as I see these very iconic locations, as we get a chance to look back on this, if anything, I truly believe that this is what fans may have wanted more than the official remake we got. The Final Fantasy VII Remake itself, as we're getting it right now, chunk by chunk, piece by piece, DLC by DLC, I love it a lot. It is visually impressive. It's certainly an expansion of original ideas, but the major complaint I've heard again and again from Final Fantasy fans is that FF7 Remake is too different from the originals. This, if anything, is more true to the original spirit. It manages to be turn-based, it manages to have these classic iconic scenes like the reactor explosion and stuff. Like, this is kind of what baffles me the most, is the fact that why are they doing this now on cell phones instead of in a place where it could actually get the attention it deserves? If you're really trying to get this game out here to be respected and talked about and debated and taken seriously, I guess, it's best to put it on the best versions of these systems. Even if this was on Nintendo Switch, I feel like people would at least realize that this is a real Final Fantasy VII version and not just another tiny thing to shell out and be forgotten. There's so many gamers across the world who consider the Final Fantasy VII games to be the best of all time. The storyline, the characters, the motivations to be so well written, from the original versions to the remakes. This is a game that manages to convey so much incredibly friggin' well done, three-dimensional storytelling, so many different angles to hard situations, and the fact that they're turning this into a little chibiified version from your cell phone to go alongside a battle royale, to me feels genuinely disgraceful. I want better of this. I want this to actually be taken seriously the way the fans have taken it seriously. Do I look like a pathetic gamer nerd right now? Maybe, but to be perfectly honest, I care about Final Fantasy VII. I like Final Fantasy VII. It's my favorite game of all time, and I hope that the developers at least care as much as the fans do. But to them, perhaps this is just a giant elaborate paycheck. What do you guys think? Please, if you could, tell me some of your thoughts in the comments down below. It felt good to get this out of my system. I've just kind of had this boiling inside because I wish that we were getting a better version of Final Fantasy VII. For the last 10 years, pretty much every single fan has just been begging to see a proper remake. Something that's going to take the original idea, the original writing, the original concepts of FF7 and done due diligence. This sucks. I can't believe we're going to be actually dealing with Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale, and I'm still going to be freaking annoyed that it exists, especially if it's going to have some core important plotline that I need to see in order to understand the main games. Because remember, that's what they did with Kingdom Hearts, and that was Tetsuya Nomura! Okay, I'm done raging. Yes, I'm going to play these at some points if it's mandatory, but please tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe, and you know what? Go play some Final Fantasy. You deserve it. God. What an absolute mess. I can't believe I'm talking about a cell phone game at freaking middle of the night when I'm recording this stupid video. What am I doing with my life? Subscribe. What am I doing with my life? Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.